Hey guys, welcome back here to Intuitive Angling, and really appreciate you guys swinging by the channel today and checking it out. And we are going to have a discussion on fishing topwaters today. I want to have just sort of a broad discussion on just some tips that I have for topwater fishing. You know, at the time of filming this video, we're in the mid part of April, and to me, topwater fishing really starts kicking in when that water temperature starts to get about 60. Now, there are some topwaters you can catch them below 60, but for me, it's 60 degrees and warmer. 60, 70, 80 degrees is topwater time, which is usually between, March and, November, December in most parts of the country. There's only a couple month window where they don't work. But I've got some good tips and advice I want to share with you guys. So we're just going to have a nice little, old time topwater discussion in today's video. And also, guys, some of my favorite topwaters, Megabass, everybody knows they make jerk baits, Vision 110. Guys, they make some of the best topwater lures you have ever seen. This is the Megabass Topwater, and I'll include some of the Megabass Topwater, some of my favorites, in my Tackle Warehouse link in the description of this video. So if you guys would like to try the Megabass Pop Max here or some other Megabass stuff, using that link is a really good way to support the channel. And also, guys, thank you very much for everybody that's taken to subscribe here to Intuitive Angling. Man, if you subscribe to the channel and hit the like all the time on those videos and shoot a comment and sign up to be a channel member, you're doing a big part to support Intuitive Angling. So thank you very much from me and my family here. Okay, who does not like to catch them on topwater? I mean, that's probably the most exciting way to catch a bass, to actually see them take a bait off the surface. And topwaters have been some of the oldest lure categories of any lure out there. They've been around for 100 years or so. I mean, that's some of the first bass lures ever were wooden topwater lures, and they're still as effective today. I mean, bass are opportunistic feeders, and they'll get anything that they can. It doesn't matter if it's in 60 foot of water on the bottom, or a shad suspended 20 foot down over 50 foot of water, or off the surface. They go for their opportunistic feeders. And topwater lures are a very unique category because the bass have to be in a certain mood and personality for them to bite this lure. So I want to talk a little bit about that in today's video, just all around. Okay, first, let's talk about sort of like the window and the optimum conditions for topwater lures, because it's not as simple. Everybody knows that like cloudy weather is good for fishing a topwater. That's sort of a given, and there is a reality to that, but that's not the case all the time. There are some topwaters out there in some situations where you can catch them in sun. Sometimes they like the sun, sometimes partly cloudy, doesn't really matter. But there's a lot of different scenarios based upon like water clarities and water temperatures that will dictate the sky conditions. Okay, first of all, the clearer the water that you're fishing, the more important the low light is. So if you're fishing a body of water that has like over 4 foot of clarity or something like that, you're going to get a lot more bites on a cloudy day, by far, especially for largemouth and spotted bass. Smallmouth are a little bit different. If you guys are fishing like the northern tier states where the big famous smallmouth fisheries like the Great Lakes and Lake Champlain and all that, smallmouth, you can catch them on topwater and bright sun. But that's an exception to the rule. That's extremely situational. So in clear water, you always want to have the lower light conditions for sure. Now, as the water clarity sort of dissipates a little bit, the light intensity, it helps a little bit if it's cloudy, but you can catch them in sun or partly cloudy conditions. But the thing, what you need to focus on for largemouth and smallmouth is if you had a brighter condition, like a partly cloudy or sunny day, that's when shade becomes important. So for example, like throwing a frog up underneath an overhanging tree that has some shade there, or getting out at 8 o'clock in the morning where the bank that you're fishing, the sun hasn't hit the bank and it has a shade line off of it. So if the water is a little bit more off-colored, say like less than 4 foot of visibility, that shade becomes really important, more than anything else. Shade on a very clear water lake does not seem to activate the fish quite as much as shade on a little bit more off-colored lake. So that's one thing to remember. Now, if you're fishing like dirtier water, like water visibility around a foot or so like that, the only topwater I really ever fish in dirty water is, usually a buzzbait or possibly a frog, something like that. And then, probably not that great of a thing to have clouds or rain in that low light condition. So that's sort of the same with that. Now, water temperatures in correlation with that also play a big impact. For me, there's a window of water temperatures where they really bite a topwater good based upon the topwater category that you're fishing. You can't say like, okay, they bite a topwater lure the best when the water temperature is 65 or 70 degrees. Every lure category has a window that it works better in. For example, buzzbait fishing. Buzzbait is one of the first lures they hit in the coldest water. So the buzzbait water temperature window for me is like 55 to 60 degrees. That's when I catch a lot of fish on a buzzbait. I don't care if it's 55 or 60 in March or if it's 55 or 60 in November. Most all of the good buzzbait days I've ever had have come in those water temperatures. Now, the exception to the rule is in the heat of the summer, if you can get out early, like when the water temperature is 85 degrees and you can have some like shallow vegetation that has shade on it, I can catch them on a little bit like 1/4 ounce buzzbait. That's sort of the scenario with that. Another bait that works good in a little bit cooler water temperatures under 60 is a wake bait. A wake bait is a really good bait in a little bit cooler situations. I don't fish a wake bait much once that water temperature gets over about 65 degrees, but it's another bait that you can catch them 55 to 60 degrees pretty good. Now, once that water temperature starts to get over 60 degrees, that's when you start getting into some different lure categories. And probably the bait that I use the most when that water temperature first starts getting over 60 degrees is a chugger, like this Megabass Pop Max. Once that water temperature is like 65 degrees, I catch a lot of fish like on a chugger, like on rocky rip-out banks. It's really good with that. Chugger is really good bait in the month of May. I put a chugger in the month of May as probably my favorite topwater. And there's a gradual transition because once that water temperature starts warming up, where it's hitting that mid-70s range, which is normally like, towards the end of May and the first part of June, that's when I like a walking topwater, like that Megabass Diamante or a Zara Spook, something like that. A walking topwater works extremely good in that little bit early summer patterns there. Now the popper, back to the popper real quick. The best conditions for a popper, like in May, is you want off-colored water. Not dirty water, but you don't want real clear water for a popper. For the most part, now this is not across the board, for the most part, I catch more bass on a popper when that water visibility is around 2 feet. It seems like the zone the fish get in or whatever, popper in 2 foot of water. And the walking topwater, it is my clear water bait. I mean, you can catch them I've caught them in 1.5 or 2 foot of visibility on a walking topwater before, but I like a walking topwater, especially during that late post-spawn, early summer period in clear water. And another thing about that is once they get on that walking topwater, it's one of the few lures with a topwater that you can catch them like on a little bit windier day. Some of the best walking topwater days I've ever had, guys, have been like in May and June when I've got clear water and the Zara Spook or the Diamante is sort of surfing over those waves. Maybe it's like a 1 or 1.5 foot chop on the water. If you have really clear water, fishing that walking topwater, like surfing it over those, windy banks and stuff like that, I've caught a ton of fish on it. One thing you want to try with the walking topwater, guys, is in the post-spawn and early summer, try paralleling bluff banks with a walking topwater if you have clear water. One of my favorite ways to catch them here in the Ozarks is like getting out there on those windier days in real clear water, like 4, 5, 6 foot of clarity, and fishing that walking topwater parallel to those bluff banks. I catch a lot of fish doing that with it. Now the summertime topwater, it sounds sort of funny because the summertime is probably my least favorite time to fish topwater, even early in the morning. The only topwater that I really fish in the summertime of the year is a frog. If I'm fishing some aquatic vegetation, like tournaments down south, like a horny toad, something like that, or frog, but I catch a lot of fish in the summertime skipping a frog underneath shady overhanging trees in real shallow water. So hot water is my frog season. That's about the only topwater that I fish when that's really hot is that frog. And as the water temperature starts going down in the fall time of the year, the first bait I transition to after the frog is a whopper plopper. A whopper plopper, and also back to the buzz bait a little bit. You know, like in September, early October, you can catch a lot of fish on those baits, regardless of the water clarity. I've caught bass on that whopper plopper in 2 foot of visibility and 10 foot of visibility. But there's something about that bait they really get on pretty good that time of year. And then as the fall goes on, you know, your walking topwaters continue to be good, you know, and the buzz baits as it get a little bit colder. So that's sort of like a window to how I like to fish them there. Now, a couple different ways that you want to work a topwater. One of the key elements in topwater fishing is to figure out the pace they want the topwater. I have seen situations where they want that bait work really fast, and I've seen situations where they want that bait work like a snail's pace. I'll give you 2 examples with it. I remember one tournament I was fishing Lake Okeechobee down there, and I was fishing a Rapala minnow on top. I was twitching that Rapala minnow, just throwing it out there, twitching it, letting it come up, letting it set. And in order to get the bite with this calm, clear backwater, and I'd throw that Rapala out there, and I'd twitch it underwater, and I'd let it come back to the surface. I'd let every ripple dissipate. It would literally be sitting there for like 30, 40 seconds. The bait would start drifting a little bit, and all of a sudden it'd be drifting a little bit, and I'll just twitch it, just barely move it, and they'll come up and annihilate it. It's almost like a bass was sitting there looking at it, and they were studying it. So if you have real clear, very shallow water, especially with vegetation, that's when I like to work a topwater extremely slow. On the other end of the spectrum, another tournament example, I was fishing a tournament at Lake Eufaula in Alabama one time, and I got on a buzzbait bite, and the water was warm, water was close to 80 degrees. I was fishing shallow flat banks that had some scattered grass, and I lucked into this. It's like I was reeling my buzzbait back in to make another cast. I was reeling it in fast, and one just clobbered the thing as I was reeling it in fast, and I started fishing it. I didn't even think anything about it. You know, I thought I just came over the top of one, and I started just fishing that buzzbait normally like I was fishing it slower, and I couldn't get a bite. And I got thinking, well, God, maybe they want that thing fast. And I started burning that buzzer and just freaking hammered them on a burning buzzbait, and then everything else in between. So the pace and the speed that you fish a topwater, you need to just experiment with it. There's no rhyme or reason a lot of times, but as a general rule of thumb, the clearer the water that you're fishing, especially if it's deeper clear water, sometimes they like it a little bit faster, and you know, if it's dirtier, you have to slow it down so they can find it a little bit. But that doesn't hold true all the time. Just experiment. If you're getting a few bites on a topwater, let's say for example you go out and you fish for 2 or 3 hours and you get 2 bites on a walking topwater, so you know they're biting a little bit. That's when you just want to experiment with a retrieve. Try, you know, an erratic retrieve, fast, medium, slow. Just experiment with a little bit. Here's another thing, like give you an example of retrieve, how important it was. There was an angler called Shorty Evans back here in Missouri from where I'm at. He was one of the oldest anglers to fish. He was an old-time Ozarks angler. And what he would do, like with a Zaraspook, he'd throw it out there, and as soon as the Zaraspook hit the water, he would reel it across the surface as fast as it could go, where it would just jump. It was just skittering crazy like everything. It wasn't even working like a Zaraspook, jumping out of the water and going all crazy looking. And then after he did that for like 10 foot, he'd let it sit there and not move it. Like let the ripples completely dissipate, and then twitch it one time and those fish would hit it. So reeling it fast across the surface like that would get the fish's attention out of that little bit deeper water. So just use your creativity and imagination with that. Colors on topwaters, there is something to that a little bit. The couple different colors I really like black. I catch a lot of fish on a black topwater, especially around any type of shade. But most of the time on my topwaters, I want some type of more of a shady, neutral looking translucent color for the most part. Smallmouth, a lot of times they like bright colors like bright pearl and chartreuse. Again, you have to mix it up. There's no like completely right answer with it. It has to do with the sunlight conditions, water temperature, water clarity, all those variables, species of fish. So it's like anything else, you just have to try something and see if it works or not. Another thing about topwaters, guys, is throw them on monofilament line. The only time that I don't throw a topwater on mono is if I'm using a frog or something like that. I'll use braided line. If I'm using like a whopper plopper, I'll use fluorocarbon. But any topwater lure that sets in the water, you always want to use monofilament line because it'll float a little bit better, and it's just better to fish a topwater with. But anyway, guys, that's just a few tips off the top of my head there. Great way to catch them, and it's a great way to catch good fish. Topwater lures, the average bass you catch on a topwater is normally bigger than most any other lure category out there. So it's worth some time spending on them. So anyway, I hope it helps you guys out. We'll talk later.